Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I would film a journal with me with a little bit of a twist. I went on a walk with my friend and her kids, my um, and my kids, and we went down the park and had a bit of a walk, and they had a play on the playground, and we took some shots, and we also played a little bit of Pokemon Go while we were out at it. And I journaled about that, as you can sort of see there. I've stuck some photos down which I printed out with my HP sprocket, and I wrote about the day and the sort of fun that we had and the stuff that we did. And I really wanted to come back later and draw in the Pokemon that we caught. So there is another spread on the other page, but for this video I just did this particular spread. So I am going to be doing that. So what you've seen so far is I've used my Pilot Colour pencil in blue, and I've drawn the outline of a Diglett, and then I've used my Sakura Micron in a 01, which I chose because it's waterproof and quite fine line, and I have got there my Derwent Inktense pencils. Inktense, wow, what a day. Inktense pencils that I'm using to colour in, and I've decided to give these a go because the watercolour that I used in my journal that you guys saw with my July setup, the paper didn't love it, and I don't mind a bit of buckling and stuff like that, but yeah, it did bleed through to the other side in a couple of areas and smudge my writing, which meant that I just had to go back and sort of rewrite over the top, which is fine. But I was hoping that the Inktense pencils, wow, say it 10 times fast. I was hoping that they would be a little bit better because they didn't need as much water, and that it would enable me to still get that really bright watercolory result without the bleeding through. And it did work. It was really good. So spoiler alert, Inktense pencils are great. So I've used my water brush to activate them, and you can see the Diglett's looking nice. I really was happy with the way that the light played across him, and you get those sort of areas of shadow in the bottom. And the water brush obviously comes out of my watercolor palette, you can sort of see there. And now I am drawing the second Pokemon, which is actually Abra. You can't tell that yet because the Colour pencils, it looks really pale on camera, but I can promise you for a fact that it's perfect when you're drawing to fine line and paint over the top, because you want something you can see, but you don't want something that's so dark that you then have to try and erase it if possible. I don't know about anybody else, but I find that when I use my eraser, I'm pretty heavy with it, and all that results in is the actual fine liner being rubbed away, and you lose the sharp, clean effect of the black. So Abra took me a little bit longer to draw because the proportions of his body and of his face were a little bit tricky. I couldn't quite decide how I wanted him to look. I didn't want the traditional splayed sort of spread-eagled posture that an Abra gets, because he's normally sort of snoozing or whatever. I wanted him to look a bit more active because we'd been out walking in the park. I didn't want him to look like he was sleeping. I certainly didn't sleep while I was out in the park. Between the two of us, Bron and I have got 5 little kitties, of which Orion is the oldest at 8, and then the youngest is 2. So we were certainly very active in terms of chasing them around and making sure they all got their turns on the swings and the slides and things like that. At the same time as we were fiddling with Pokemon Go and having our little nerdy mum time. So I really wanted Abra's position to reflect that. Well, all the Pokemon really. So Diglett is looking in towards what we were doing. He's at the beginning, and I did that to match the washi tape with the arrows that were pointing inwards as well. And then yeah, Abra's position is quite dynamic. Is that the word I want? Dynamic? Active. You can tell that he's sort of either in the process of moving or ready to move. And he's not a very expressive looking Pokemon. He doesn't have a big smiley face or giant wide eyes. He's sort of very subtle with his looking. So, and obviously he relies quite heavily on psychic power for most of his moves. But I wanted to have that active posture, but also that sort of psychic, sort of floaty, sort of vibe, which is why I ended up deciding to have him sort of looking like he's floating up in the air, still chilling and watching everybody, but just, taking his time and being part of it. And then I only use, there's a really fine eraser on the end of the Pilot Enos that I really like, which I was using just to take out anything that wasn't going to get coloured, basically, so outside of the lines. And that was the point also you saw me move the Inktense pencils in. It's when I realised you guys couldn't see them in the frame, and it would probably look a bit weird with me just reaching off into nowhere. So I do not have the full range of Inktense pencils. I got a small starter set for my birthday last year, and every time there's a local art shop near me, and every time I visit it, I just pick up one or two more to sort of expand my collection. I love them very, very much. I love the way that they blend. I love the way that you get the really intense colour out of them. The only thing that makes me a little bit sad about these pencils is that there is no true pink. You have shades of red through to purple, but the shades that are called pink are definitely not pink pink. They're like a red pink. So that's just Derwent in general. I have found any Derwent pencils that I've ever owned or tried to expand a collection, there's no real pink. And in fact, I have some Polychromos pencils, and the very first one I ever bought was a single pink one, because the old Derwents that I used to use that I had left over from high school, obviously there was no pink. So anyway, I digress. I'm now using the water to activate the colours on Abra's head and sort of start getting him moving. I didn't really have the exact shade of gold that he was, so as you probably saw, I layered up some sort of yellow and then a little bit of brown and then some orangey shades to help with the shading, just because he had his arms and legs. Oh, there's Piper pointing, asking me what Pokemon that was. She recognized Diglett, but she did not recognize Abra. I suppose it's not one of the more common ones. And she saw herself in the pictures, so she wanted to sort of jump in and say hi. But yeah, anyway, I decided to use the sort of orangey warmer tones to denote sort of depth, and I was really happy with how that turned out. I am still learning all the time about colour and how it works and how to create the depth and how to make something sort of pop on the page. And here's the point where I realised I hadn't put any sort of shadowy areas under his chin, and unfortunately they didn't darken up as much as I would have liked. One of the downsides of the Inktense pencils is that once you've activated them with the water, it's then quite tricky to go back and add more later. You sort of have to do all your layering and you're sort of guessing where your shadows are going to go before you add the water. It's not impossible, but it's just not as easy. And now I'm going in here with my white gel pen to add some highlights to him. And yeah, I was really, really happy with how he turned out. Now the third and final Pokemon on this spread is one that is very recognizable, that everybody kind of knows. And with that in mind, the pressure is almost on there to make sure you get it right. You don't want to draw it incorrectly. But I used to draw, it's Jigglypuff, by the way. I was not trying to draw out that suspense and be rude. I did not even think about that. But I was just like, oh yeah, this Pokemon, because I know what it is and you don't. Anyway, it's Jigglypuff. I used to draw Jigglypuff a lot when I was in high school, because it's so easy to draw. It's just circles and little pointy bits off the side. So this was really fun for me. Jigglypuff on Pokemon Go is one of those sort of it just pops up randomly, and I did already have one, but I caught an extra one on the day just for kicks, because I've always thought Jigglypuff has, at least on the TV series, a really hilarious personality, and is often undersold just being this sort of big pink bubblegum ball. Now, as I said before, the pink range in my Derwents is not great, and Jigglypuff is most definitely pink, so I decided to take the risk and very, very carefully use my actual watercolours for her body, his body, its body. So the Inktense pencils were used for the eyes and mouth and the inner ears and, all that sort of stuff. But when it comes to Jigglypuff's actual body, you'll see me using my watercolours. And I can't tell you the name of that shade particularly. It was one that was gifted to me, but it is a handcrafted watercolour from an Etsy seller, and I really love it. It's not quite the bubblegum shade of Jigglypuff, but it is a lovely pale pink that was when I put it on really, really lightly, it was enough that you can definitely see, yep, that's a Jigglypuff, and yes, Jigglypuff is pink. So I was actually really pleased in the end how it turned out, because I was trying to be mindful of not making the shade too dark, but also of not using too much water and making it bleed through to the other side. Although it probably wouldn't have made too much of a difference because there's blank spaces on the other side where my writing is, but I didn't want to take the risk of ruining the spread on the back. So I'm just using a darker pink to add in some shadows, and then I am now activating the Inktense pencils. The eyes were a bit of a challenge, getting the colour to sort of blend, and I don't know how well it's going to show up on camera, not very well, but the black does blend out to like a dark aquary, tealy kind of colour. Oh, you can sort of see it. And I was pretty happy with how that turns out. Eyes are a big problem for me. I struggle with eyes a lot. Anyway, that's her little mouth, and that brings us to the end. I hope you guys enjoyed these Pokemon, and when I get round to doing the back half of the spread, I'll be sure to share that too. But until then, have a good one. See you later.